and welcome to today's Modesto Bee Political Forum featuring candidates for the judicial seat being vacated by Stanislaus Superior Court Judge Scott Steffens, who is retiring. Here for today's forum are attorney Samuel Getrich and prosecutor Annette Rees. Each candidate will have a minute for an opening statement and another minute for a closing statement. In between, they will be asked questions from the Modesto Bee editorial board, led by opinions editor Garth Stapley. This is the 7th and final candidates forum. The primary is March 3rd. Mail ballots go out in early February. Let's get started.
Very good. We'll do opening statements first, 1 minute each, and we'll start with Sam.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sam Getrich. I've been living in the Valley all my life. My mom corrected me the other day. I thought I moved here when I was 5. We moved here when I was 4. Thanks, Mom. The last 20 years I've lived in Modesto. 10 of those years I worked as an EMT for AMR, answering 911 calls. During that time I went to law school at George, joined the DA's office, spent 9 years there as a prosecutor, left there, spent 2.5 years as a civil attorney doing civil trials, and I now work for Bruce Perry and Associates downstairs in your office, doing appointed work for indigent people who can't afford their own counsel.
Very good. Annette?
Thank you. I want to thank the Bee for hosting this forum. What a great way for our voters to get to hear directly from the candidates. My name is Annette Rees. My experience is as a veteran prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor for over 22 years. In May will be 19 years here in Stanislaus County. I'm a resident of this county. I raised my son here in this county, and I'm committed to my community. The bulk of my career has been spent as a prosecutor of Special Victims Unit, which is rape, murder, and molest, some of the toughest cases that we have in the DA's office. I am passionate about justice, and I also have a business background. Prior to becoming a lawyer, I was in business for myself. So I hired and fired people, I negotiated contracts, so I am able to run an efficient courtroom, and that is my promise to you.
Thank you. Well, we want to hear about some of the major influences in your life. We'll start with Annette.
That's easy. That's my mom. She grew up on a farm in Iowa. She brought herself to California to educate herself, become a teacher. She went to work for the Department of the Defense, teaching school children on Air Force bases, which is where she met my father. She was actually the first woman to get a master's degree in education from California State University, Dominguez Hills. And then she got cancer when she was 45. She was cancer-free for many years, and then 20 years later got cancer again. That time it killed her. So the first time she got cancer, she made sure that I was going to be defiantly independent, and I think she would be very proud of what I'm doing now.
I think so too. Sam, major influences.
Everyone's been going with the same thing, and I'll follow that track. It's my mother and my father. My father to a lesser degree. My father struggled with a lot of issues, and he lost his fight with his demons when I was in my 20s. So I'm very familiar with the effects of mental health and mental illness, and alcoholism, and suicide. My mother raised 4 kids largely by herself, and she was adamant that her 4 children would go on to higher education. When my parents divorced, the court told my mom, your oldest kid, private school. Next kid, UC. 3rd kid, maybe CSU or junior college. Last kid, write them off. That's how it goes with children of divorce. So every year as her children advanced and went through school, she wrote letters to the courts and to our primary teachers to show them how her kids had progressed. So my mother is by far my role model and has impacted my life massively.
All right. As a journalist, I want to ask you more about your colorful backgrounds, but we probably should get into the law a little bit. But first, I would like to ask a little bit more about your background. Annette, you mentioned that you owned a business. We want to know what the nature of that was and how it might have helped prepare you for the law.
Absolutely. I got my undergraduate in business management from Pepperdine, and then I went on to get a master's degree in healthcare administration. So I ran large multi-specialty medical groups. From there, I got my best clients to invest in me in terms of starting an electronic billing service. So that was my business, doing electronic billing for medical practices. At the height, I had 7 people working for me. I did my own marketing, as I said, contract negotiations. So I know about having critical conversations. I know about holding people accountable. I know about some civil litigation, and I know that that will help me in terms of running an efficient courtroom, dealing with difficult people, and being a judge.
Very good. Sam, similar question. You were an EMT and actually for many years. Tell us a bit about how that helped prepare you for what you're doing now.
The 10 years I spent working for AMR put me in close contact with every single segment of our society. I ran calls throughout this entire county. You know, when you get a call, you have no idea who you're going to. You get a description, a gender, maybe an age, and a complaint. You don't know if they're homeless. You don't know if it's law enforcement. You don't know if you're going to go to Del Rio or you're going to go to South 7th Street. You don't know if you're going to be staging on a call where someone has a history of violence. And I literally picked up and carried the sick, the dead, and the dying of this community and stood shoulder to shoulder with our firefighters and our law enforcement. And that gave me a really good insight into how our community works, how the people in our community live, and a lot of empathy for those people. And making critical decisions in adverse conditions, adverse environments, literally life and death decisions, deciding in a mass casualty incident, is this person going to live or not? Or do we do CPR on this person, or do we move on to this person? So I've made those critical decisions and worked with law enforcement and other areas. So that's my background.
Very good. Sam, you used to work for the district attorney's office. How long was that?
Approximately 9 years.
9 years. And you were supervised by Annette.
Towards the end, yes, I was.
Tell us how she was as a supervisor. What sort of supervisor was she?
Annette and I always got along well. Before she became a supervisor, we actually worked together for the County Attorneys Association and actually represented the union in negotiations against the, or not against, but I guess against the county in terms of trying to get a new contract as our community was climbing out of the Great Recession. So we always got along very well professionally. She was always interested and curious about my family and polite about that. We've always gotten along very well.
Annette, how many people do you supervise, and what sort of employee was Sam?
Right now, I believe I'm supervising 10 deputy district attorneys. It varies, which do I hesitate? We rotate people quite frequently, so I've had.
Do you have certain units, or what? How does that work?
Certain departments and units.
Departments
yes.
and units.
Yes, I have always supervised the special victims unit, but the other calendar departments, they vary. And so I've had as many as 14 deputy district attorneys that I've supervised and as little as 9. Right now, I believe I have 10. Sam worked in our office for 9 years. Of course, as a supervisor, I can't divulge any human resources information. Sam's right, we always got along in the office, and we did serve together on the board for the County Attorneys Association and were part of the collective bargaining team. So we had to work as a team, and that was a good thing.
Both of you work in criminal law. You could perhaps be assigned to a civil court as a judge. How would you get up to speed, Annette? In civil law, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Civil litigation is not completely foreign to me with my business background, as well as we do a lot of law in motion in criminal work. We do have some quasi-civil proceedings like sexually violent predators, like mentally disordered offenders. We do share the same civil code of procedure, the same evidence code, the same government code. So there is a little bit of overlap. I do have exposure to civil litigation. And we have an excellent civil litigation bar in this county. They keep our cases in this county. So I know I would have 2 experienced attorneys briefing issues for me. We are all of the candidates qualified lawyers, so we know how to research law. So I would have parties, litigants, briefing issues for me, bringing me the law. I would do the research and I would make a fair decision based on the law.
Sam, same question.
Sorry, I've done civil litigation quite recently. I left Zumwalt LLP just over a year ago. I was there 2.5 years. During that time, I was engaged in multiple lawsuits and did 2 trials, as well as assisting in 2 other trials, and have been engaged during that time in civil discovery. Civil discovery is a whole different animal than criminal discovery. The criminal discovery process is mandatory. The prosecution must provide the information they have under both statute and case law. Civil is a lot more litigious in terms of getting discovery, and the law in motion is much more complex. There's a lot more pre-trial work, motions for summary judgment that I've been involved with. They're a lot more complex and a lot more messy. Most civil litigation is involved in those areas and doesn't go to trial as often. So I'm very well versed in that. I've done that. I've sat before the civil bench and I've done civil trials. So segueing into that, which is likely, would be very simple for me.
All right, thank you. Annette has mentioned at least twice, if I'm not mistaken, efficiency in the courtroom. And as you know, the Bee has reported at various times over the years how there is a certain backlog, especially in criminal cases in our Stanislaus courts. Where does the problem lie? Is it with the DA's office, with the judges, or with courts administration? And what would you do if elected to improve efficiency in your courtroom? We'll start with Sam.
Thank you. I don't mean to play with your question, but I think it's overly simple to say the problem. If you're looking at a bottleneck, a bottleneck's only an issue depending on the volume pouring through the bottleneck. So that we have a certain volume of cases coming in, the judges, the bench have no control over that. The DA, that has the control. So if the quantity of cases is too big, there's only so many judges on the bench. So that's going to overwhelm at some point regardless. So ideally, you'd want to see a certain quantity along with quality of cases coming in. But again, that's beyond the control of the bench. We're all human. You've got reporters who are more efficient than other reporters. We have judges who may be more efficient than other judges. We have a direct calendar system. So each judge is responsible for their own calendar. And once their calendar is done for the morning, they ideally, in a perfect world, will volunteer and advise other judges, hey, I'm available, I can take cases, I can do hearings. But that's completely on their own prerogative.
Thank you, Annette.
You're correct. We do have a significant backlog of cases, particularly in the criminal courts. We have about 5 times as many criminal cases filed than civil cases in this county. In the 17-18 fiscal year, we had 173 trials. Only 5 of those were civil. So the civil litigators do a much better job of whittling down that issue to just what the contested problem is. I do think it is a multi-level problem. It is not just on one party. However, everybody has responsibility. As you said, the DA's office is responsible for providing timely discovery. The defense bar is responsible for being ready when they say they are to be ready. If we set a trial 9 months from now, then you should be ready to do that trial in 9 months. And I just got an email this morning from a constituent who said she's been waiting 7.5 years for this particular murder trial, and not mine, to go to trial. And that is unacceptable. Our community deserves much better than that, and we can do much better. So more mandatory settlement conferences, control, and accountability. Everybody has to be accountable.
Thank you. These next 2 questions are related, but we'll have you answer them separately, and we'll give you 45 seconds each to answer them. My introduction is this. The Bee has a duty to help people understand how their justice system works and how their dollars are being spent to achieve justice. We believe that this is best accomplished with transparency. First, please explain your thoughts on judges allowing cameras in the courtroom. Annette.
Well, there is California Rules of Court regarding cameras in the courtroom, 1.150, and there are guidelines set out for a judge to look at to make that decision. You're going to look at the importance of public access to that information, weigh and balance that against the parties' rights to a fair trial. So are cameras in the courtroom going to affect the witnesses, affect the jury if there's a jury in the room, and balance those different interests? I lean towards greater transparency. I would lean towards having that public access to information, and I would weigh all of those statutory guidelines to make a decision about having cameras. I will say, as a prosecutor of sexual assault, the Bee has always been tremendous at keeping identities out of the picture.
Thank you. Sam?
I would be concerned about cameras, especially video cameras in the courtroom. There's a certain sort of camera shyness and awareness. There's a jury instruction every jury gets about, talking to the media, no matter what the case is. If it's a misdemeanor or a serious felony case, they're told you can't talk to the press for so many days and sell your story. And that's a concern that obviously the bar has and the state has. So a video camera, for example, in a courtroom would, I think, potentially distract jurors and witnesses and parties from the issue, which is determining the facts and weighing the evidence. The Bee has full access to most of the courtrooms during most hearings, and a print story, while not as interesting to absorb the news from, can easily convey the same information if someone wants to read it. So a video camera would be concerning for me, but I still can perhaps.
Thank you. Secondly, explain what might prompt you to take the extreme step of sealing records and proceedings. Sam?
I think in some cases it's not extreme, in multiple cases it's mandatory. Whether you're looking at some civil cases with the cyber porn revenge laws, litigants are allowed, in fact, to even file under Jane or John Doe, keep their names completely off the record. And that includes all the discovery and all the materials in that matter. So there are certain cases that are sealed, and that's civil and criminal. Juvenile cases, in some instances, are sealed. So I wouldn't say extreme. If there's an extreme case that requires that or would be requested by a party to seal a record, you'd have to weigh the evidence and the facts and balance that between the litigant's interest, the party's interest, and the public interest in their right to know. We need open and clear courtrooms.
Thank you. Annette?
Obviously, there are some statutory guidelines, things that must be sealed. There are also discretionary areas. For example, in sexual assault cases, I often have to have the criminal protective order sealed. So again, weighing and balancing the public's right to know, following the law as far as any statutory guidelines that keep those proceedings sealed, and the public access versus privacy or risk to the person identified or the contents of the record.
Very good. The issue of cash bail has been in the public discourse in recent years across the nation and in California particularly. There's been some legislation. Tell us why you would prefer cash bail or risk assessments. We'll start with Annette.
I think the move toward risk assessment, anything that delivers greater equality as far as application of the system is a good thing. And so I'm very interested in the risk assessments, the algorithms being developed, because we want to eliminate any intrinsic bias in scoring those as well. But I think if we can increase equality of application in terms of bail, that's a very good thing.
Okay, Sam?
I don't have a preference, and as a candidate, I shouldn't be expressing a preference. But obviously, whether you again, live in Del Rio, or whether you live west of the tracks downtown, or whether you're homeless, you should all have the same rights, and everyone should be treated the same way. The bail schedule is set up based on offenses, but if you're cash rich and liquid, then you can easily post bail. I've got clients with their bail's $1,000. You only have to post a portion of that to a bail bond, and they can't get out. So being in custody is a lot more complex in terms of defending yourself than being out of custody. So everyone needs to be treated fairly and equally and be given equal access to justice and to freedom.
Very good. We might have heroes among our local Stanislaus Court judges. Tell us who you look up to, active or retired, and why. Sam? This is going to be a short answer, 30 seconds.
No problem. I'm not going to pick local active as I'm endorsed by 3, and I don't want to pit one against the other. But I will tell you, I greatly admire, respect, and miss the late, great John Whiteside.
Me too. Annette?
Because I still appear in court every day and have murder cases, I'm not going to pick out one judge over another. I miss also Ray Ledeen. I miss John Whiteside, who I did my first murder trial in front of. All of our judges are dedicated and hardworking.
Picking those who have passed away, that was pretty smart of you candidates. Tell us something you appreciate about your opponent. We're going to limit this to 30 seconds as well. Annette?
That's easy. Sam's dedication to his family. He's always very dedicated to his family life, and I appreciate that about him.
I have to ask, are you still pregnant? Expecting?
I'm good, but my wife is still expecting us.
Very good. Sam, you have something to say about Annette?
Yes, we covered this before we went on camera, but we worked well together on the County Attorneys Association, and I do admire Annette's dedication to being in the SVU for that many years. It's a very serious, dark place for some of those cases. That's a lot of work to be in that area.
Good. In the race for Judge Seat 2, do you support Colleen Van Egmond or Jeff Menger? Sam?
I'm in one race, and I know Mr. Mangar from working with him for years. I met Colleen, had her for lunch so we could touch base, so I know all the candidates. She seemed very likable, proficient, and able, but I'm not endorsing any other race.
Annette?
I'm not going to endorse or pick anyone else because I'm in the unique position, as we talked about earlier. I've supervised not only Mr. Getrich, Mr. Main, Mr. Mangar, and Mr. Carrillo. So I am not going to pick anyone.
So if I ask about a Judge Seat 5 and Mr. Carrillo, Mr. Hara, or Mr. Main, Annette, you would shut me down again.
I would.
And Sam?
You would be wasting your breath, yes.
Share with us your vision for the future of our judicial system. Sam?
Well, it's always evolving. You know, it's the legislature makes new laws. You see huge swings. The 3 strikes law evolved decades ago, and we've gone ways away from that. So you've got legislature changes. You have changes based on what the appellate courts rule. So ideally, we see a system where the community is more involved. The community feels welcome in all the courtrooms. The community believes that the judges represent them and understand who they are from all walks of life as our community continues to change, as our nation does.
Annette?
I see a justice system with greater access and greater transparency. I see reaching out more into our communities with more outreach and possibly the use of greater technology to reach more people who don't have access even to computers. So I see a return more to community prosecution, greater access, greater transparency to allow more people to be part of our, understand and be part of our justice system.
Thank you. Honestly, one of the challenges of issuing endorsements in judges' races is that you're all so very bright and qualified. What sets you apart from your opponent? Annette?
I think it has to be my work ethic. I've dedicated over 22 years of my life to public service, and I am, as I said, passionate about justice, and that means justice for everyone. Parties, victims, witnesses, defendants, jurors. My son spent the better part of his life growing up in a law library because I went to school at night while I ran my business, and I work hard, and I'm very, very dedicated, and I will continue that as a judge, and that combined with my business skills that allow me to run an efficient courtroom, I believe differentiates me.
Very good. Same question, Sam.
Thank you. You know, we have different backgrounds, obviously, but I think one of the differences is that some of the people who are endorsing me, Modesto City firefighters, who worked with me in the streets, who worked with me saving lives and helping people and pulling them out of crushed and destroyed cars, they're endorsing me now. And they worked with me when I was doing the arson prosecution. the Modesto Police Officers Association, who just endorsed me officially yesterday. I worked with them for 10 years on the streets. I worked with them for 9 years in the courtroom. I have 3 judges on the bench, from the family bench, the juvenile, and the criminal bench, who are endorsing me. And those are all parties who I actually litigated against as a prosecutor. So I've gotten the endorsements of people from several different careers, including my current one, who believe I have the character and temperament to be an excellent judge on our bench.
Obviously, the outcome of this will be someone is elected. Tell us the pros and cons of choosing our judges by election versus appointment. Sam.
Well, unfortunately, with this current race, one of the cons is that with the primary being moved up, there's not a lot of opportunity for the electorate to get to know everybody. You know, if it's just simply name recognition because we are a down ballot race, that's not the best way to elect somebody. You know, if you have the most signs out or the most media out, it doesn't mean you're the most qualified. So that kind of hampers the electorate's ability to choose somebody. The upside is the community gets a voice. They get to pick. They get to bypass the governor's system, the Jenny Commission. So the appointment might be a more fluid process or a more thorough process, but it might to a certain extent cut out the community because the Jenny letters don't go to yourself or my neighbor. They go out to the legal community. So a chunk of the community is cut out on the appointment process. So they both have pros and cons. The biggest con now is it's such a short primary system.
Thank you. What would you add to that, Annette?
I think that elections are great because of this voter interaction, and so the transparency is increased. As I said, I'm in favor of greater transparency and community involvement. So this way, the community is involved, and you can go to the websites, you can go to the Facebook page, you can watch these forums, you can attend debates, and so you get more of an idea of the background of the person as opposed to sort of a secret appointment process where the public doesn't have a lot of input or exposure.
Thank you. This has been great. Let's do some closing statements. We'll go in reverse order, meaning we'll start with you, Annette.
Thank you. Again, thank you to the Bee for putting on this forum. I appreciate having this access to the voters, and I hope that I have demonstrated that with my extensive litigation experience, my business skills, much of the training and education that I have, that I am the best vote for Superior Court Judge, that I have the right temperament, as I said, the right training, and I would encourage people to do that education. Go to the website page, www.annetterees.com, or my Facebook page, Annette Rees for Judge 2020. Learn about me, look at my bipartisan endorsements, look at the videos that people have made, victims and their family members, and the statements that they have made about my work ethic and my passion for justice. And I ask for the voters to vote me in as Superior Court Judge so that I can continue my community service to them.
Thank you. Sam.
Thank you. I've given, like I said, 20 years of my life to public service. 10 of those years trying to save lives, and in fact saving lives in our community. I worked shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand with the men and women of Modesto police officers, the men and women of the Modesto City firefighters. I put myself through law school at nights while working on the ambulance. I've got a background in not only emergency medicine, I have a background as a criminal prosecutor, as a civil attorney, both a plaintiff's attorney and defense attorney doing civil work, and now doing criminal defense work. And that's the reason that the Modesto Police Officers Association backed me. Their experience with me on the streets, and they understand that I have a full range of experience on the bench, criminal on both sides, civil on both sides, and I can segue into becoming a civil judge in a heartbeat. That's also why I have the backing of the Modesto City firefighters and multiple other groups and 3 of the judges on the bench. They recognize my temperament, my ability to work well with others, and I ask for your vote. Thank
you very much. We appreciate you coming forward and putting yourselves out there to run. We appreciate that it's not always an easy thing to do, and to let everybody have a look at your lives and be out there. And we very much appreciate your service to our community, both as candidates and in your jobs. This concludes this candidates forum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.